There we go. Camera adjustments, camera adjustments. Yay! Good morning, artists. We have a new setup. I'm in my basement now. You actually get to see me this time around. I have a whiteboard. It's just like we're back in class. Isn't that fantastic? It's going to take a little getting used to because I'm looking at my camera and I'm trying to make sure that it's still working on my laptop. So if I look like I'm looking back and forth, that's what I'm doing, is I'm checking to make sure that everything is still working, that we haven't stopped streaming, because everything's a little bit new this time. So welcome back. I hope you had a great spring break. For those of you that celebrated a holiday over the weekend, I hope that you had a great holiday and were able to stay safe, and remember to wash your hands all the time, because that's all we can do right now, right? So this is going to be a little bit of a different kind of stream for those of you that have been following me all week. Mostly you've just been seeing my paper. Now you get to see me a little bit, but we will be going back and forth. So we are going to be doing drawing today, but we're going to be starting a new round of classes at this point. So previously, those of you who are in my class, we had a packet that you either picked up or you found on Google Classroom, and you should have had that completed. If you have not finished it, do not panic. We're going to be very lenient about when things are getting due. Try, if you can, to get them done within the next week or two so that you have enough time to be able to work on the stuff that we're starting now. You don't have to keep up with me necessarily. Part of the reason why I'm putting this on video too is so that you can pause it if you need to. But it can be really fun to just do it live with me as well, and it's kind of more like class. And then you also get the opportunity to ask me questions as you go, and I can switch things up. So if you're following along with me and you need something clarified, or if you want to request something to be added into our picture, depending on what it is, then you have the opportunity to add in there. So what we're going to be working on this week is we are starting landscapes, which a landscape is a picture that is focused entirely on nature. It usually is pretty much always the outdoors. And even though it can have things like houses and people and animals in it, those aren't usually the focus of the picture. The focus is on the nature around it. Trees, bushes, flowers, grass, rivers, mountains, all of these things. So, example, don't laugh, some of this is old. Oh, good morning. I see some people popping in. Yay! Welcome, you guys. So here is a landscape. Ooh, make sure I got it right on the camera. This is a painting that I did a couple of years ago. And the idea for any kind of good landscape is you want to have things that are close to the person who's looking at it and things that are further and further away. So things in the middle and things toward the back. Now, general rule with any landscape is that if it's closer to the viewer, it is not only larger, but it starts lower on your picture. And as you start going further back, things that are in the middle are a little bit smaller and a little bit higher, and then they get smaller and higher and smaller and higher as you go. Okay? So here's one. Here, let's look at another one. Thank you. I'm glad you guys like it there in chat. This one's a little bigger. I hope I can get the whole thing in there. It's a little dark too. Nighttime scene. Exciting. So this was another painting I did back actually in my college years. I wish I had some more of my newer stuff, but most of that's at school, and I haven't had a chance to pick that stuff up yet. So here again, looking at a very far landscape, we've got stuff all the way up at the front, lots of details with the grass and such. Let's see if I can get a little closer so you can kind of see that. There you go. And then as it starts to go further and further away, things start to get smaller. You don't see the details in the grass anymore. Ooh, stay in the picture, please. And then further back, things like the mountains, all the way in the distance. So there's that whole big one. So what we're going to be working on is talking about having things that are really close and then showing how they can go further into the background. So we're going to be doing this together. Let's get this out of the way. And now we're going to switch our view. Ooh. Uh-oh. Camera issues. There we go. Move the paper, not the camera. Yay, alright. So before we actually start the drawing part, there are a few things I want to talk with you about when it comes to drawing landscapes. You'll probably be familiar with some very early landscape ideas. When we're very young, we usually start out our outdoor pictures looking something like this. And some of you will probably go, I still do that. And that's okay. We're working on getting past it. Outdoors will have flowers, and there will be trees, and it will be beautiful. And there's probably going to be a sun. So this is probably pretty familiar. This is the very first kind of landscape most students end up drawing. Few things to be careful of. First off, we know that this is the ground. It's usually colored in green, right? This area would usually be colored in blue. And when you ask a kid what that is, they'd say, oh, that's the sky. And then you point to this space and you say, what is that? And they'll probably tell you the air. But if you actually stand outside and take a look at the world, the sky itself does not stop, and then there is nothing in between that and the ground. Either the sky will come all the way down to the ground, or there'll be something like a house, a mountain, to interrupt it. Of course, we have our sun. And I'm a big fan of suns and moons and whatnot. And you guys, if you followed me, you've seen that I've done a lot of little sun designs like this. But when you're trying to do something realistic, the sun does not have sticks coming out of it. Please, for this project, no sticks in the sun. I know that's our way of saying this is how we know it's bright and shining, but the sun does not have sticks coming out of it. We also want to be careful of things like if the house and the flower are in the same level, how is the flower bigger than the house? And same with the trees. You've got this very wide tree trunk that's wider than a door, but the tree is shorter than the house. So we're going to start looking at things like this and trying to get things a little bit more realistic looking. Our next level will usually be now students will start to actually draw lines to represent the grass. Our houses might become a little more realistic. We've probably added a chimney, which will always have smoke coming out of it because that's how we do. The house might be a little more sophisticated. There might be curtains, right? The flower may have gotten to a slightly better size. It's usually joined by another kind of flower because we learn how to do new flowers. We might not have the line of the sky anymore, but what we will have is this, my nemesis. Oh, the sun in the corner. Usually humongous, way too big for any sun to be. Our tree has probably changed a little bit. Usually a cannon will have blown a huge hole in it. And if you try to tell me that that's a hole for squirrels and for owls and other nature creatures, no. They're not going to nest in something that low to the ground, and that would kill the tree, a hole that big in it. And then watch out especially for the horrible monsters that take over the sky, the flying V's. I know they're supposed to be birds. Birds don't actually look like that. They are much wider. They are not little sticks. There's usually some kind of a tail. That's a bird. Other things to be careful of, even as we start getting into a more sophisticated looking background. Maybe we figured out mountains. Ooh, we have a house that maybe we'll use some of that 3D stuff that we've been learning on how to draw realistic looking boxes. maybe the tree is now a little bit better sized. There's no longer a hole in it. Maybe our flowers are even better. But then we got to be careful of some other things. Number one is, again, the idea of a giant sun. And I know that this tends to look very cool, giant sunset, but again, humongous sun, everything burned up. Doesn't work that way. And any adding of water, I know that if you can't color it, the immediate thing to think of is let's draw waves so that we know it's water. Waves do not come into spiking points like this. If you go to any lake or river, you are not going to see it. Especially if you do a river. The idea of having spikes in that river, that's crazy. So we're going to be avoiding all that. I will show you how to do water in a much better way. All right? So, things to be careful of. Suns with sticks. No. Giant flowers that are bigger than houses. No. Corner suns. Oh my gosh. Big, big, big. N-O. None of that. Spiky water. No. Alright? So these are the things we're watching out for. Let's get to the drawing. So if you have your paper and your pencil and you're going to follow along with me, awesome. Let's try it out. And again, if you're following along with me now and you get a little stuck, you can let me know in the chat that you need me to slow down a little bit. Or if you're watching on video, you can always pause it later and work on it then. Catch up a little. Let me see if I can pull back just a tiny bit more. Yeah, now we can see the whole paper. All right. So first thing we're going to start off with for our landscape. We want to start off with a line near the top, not too high. This is called our horizon line. You don't have to write this. I'm just putting it here for vocabulary. The horizon is the place where the sky and the earth meet. So whenever you're drawing any kind of outdoor scene and you do want to include the sky, you're going to have some kind of a line. It won't necessarily be a straight line, but this is the divider between the sky and the ground. Everything below here is going to be ground. Okay? Now what I want you to do is split up this lower area. Try to draw lightly. And remember, a good trick for drawing lightly is to hold your pencil close to the end. When you hold it up near the front, it's harder to draw lightly. You'll see me switch back and forth pretty often between holding it in the middle or holding it near the end. And holding it near the end is the best way to get the lightest line. Don't worry about it being perfectly straight. This is an outdoor scene. We don't need it to be perfect. And then each of these spaces, the top and the bottom space, you're going to split that and split that. The reason is we're going to be creating different spaces to draw our different items. These are guidelines to help us figure out the front and the middle and the back. And for our landscape, we're going to have these 4 levels of ground. The ground that is at the bottom, this is the one that's in the front. It has its own word. It's called the foreground. 4, not like the number, but F-O-R-E, kind of like forehead. So that word fore means front. So our foreground is the ground that is the most forward, just like our forehead is the part of our head that is furthest forward. The one up near the top here, not the very top, that very top part, that's our sky. But the highest level of ground, the one that's the furthest towards the back, easy enough to remember, is the background. So even if we're doing, those of you who did still life with me and a couple other things, when we talk about adding in a background, that's usually referring to you have an object and then you have the thing behind it. When we're talking about a landscape, the background is the area of the ground that is the furthest away from us. And then the 2 in the middle, You could say middle ground. We're going to use its shorter term, which is mid-ground. Mid-ground. We got mid-ground number 1 and mid-ground number 2. So I'll be referring to these different areas as the foreground, mid-ground 1, 2, background, and sky. All right? So let's start off with, let's just do a tree. Let's do a tree, guys. So the trick for drawing a tree, here's some things to watch out for. I'm going to get back my do not draw scrap paper here for a second. Things to be careful of. I've seen trees being drawn with this little bubble thing on top. It's not that this is necessarily the wrong idea. The problem that happens with this is we do this very quickly without really thinking of the shape of a tree. Trees do not tend to be perfectly round like this unless they've had some shaping done. Not usually. You also have to be careful of how wide the tree is. For however tall a tree is, the trunk should kind of relate to that. If you have a very wide trunk like this, the tree should be much taller. This is an old tree. It should have much more branches and fill out a lot more. So if you want to do something that's about this size in terms of the branches, you need a trunk that is half that size. And that might feel a little strange, and it might look a little strange, but that's just because you're not used to thinking of it this way. When drawing things like branches, I'll tend to see a lot of things that will come out kind of like, either we'll get the star pattern, which is here's all the branches, maybe with some other branches sticking out of it. Try to avoid ending any branches with like a square shape, okay? Trees don't just end like that. And if it does, it's usually because something cut it off or it broke off. And then you want to consider things like that. Plus, most tree branches, with only a few exceptions, don't grow downwards. Okay? There are some trees that will have branches that will curve and hang down lower, but most trees tend to grow upwards. They are trying to get to the sun. They're trying to grow towards the light. So what you want to remember when you're drawing a tree that should have leaves on it is actually the letter Y. Okay? What that means is, when you're drawing a tree trunk, the branches should break off like you're making a letter Y, like a block letter. And every little branch after that, as the tree continues to grow and split, will become another letter Y. And each branch is going to get thinner as you go, because as the tree keeps growing upwards and splitting off into new branches, they're going to start off a little bit smaller. Because remember, this part of your tree is the oldest part of the tree. So this should be the widest part. As it gets higher and higher, those branches are younger and younger. They're new branches, so they will get smaller. So to start our tree on our paper, let's get the vocab back. I'll be switching off and doing that quite a bit, where I'll pull up things that you guys don't need to draw. I'm just showing you. So we're going to start in mid-ground 1. We'll start close to the edge here, not right near the edge, but give it a little bit of space. And you're going to draw 2 lines that are going to head right up and just past this line. So right in the middle of mid-ground 1, just up into the background. Keep these pretty close together. So you see it's actually thinner than my pinky. So keep your line kind of small. Then we're going to do our letter Y, where this splits off, and you're going to head towards the horizon line. Just past it. And when you go to draw the next part of this, start in the middle, right where the split happened, and that'll give you a good idea of how wide those branches should be. Now we're going to split again. We're only going to go about halfway up into the sky this time. So each time I'm splitting, the distance between the split and the next split is going to get smaller. So one going out, one going up. Maybe make this one come inwards a little bit. Let's make one a little bit longer than the other. So once you get to this point is when you can start playing around with how tall your splits are. So you could even have one of these be a little bit shorter than the other. You don't want them to be too perfectly matching, because otherwise that will start to look too fake, because trees are not perfectly symmetrical, meaning they're not the same on each side. So let's split those branches again. Into our thinner branches. And we'll do one more little split on each side. And that's going close to the edge of the paper. That's fine. Don't be afraid if things are going off the paper. And have a little fun with these. Start to make them a little bit curvier. Start to have one really long and one really short. Maybe even have one of your longer ones do another little split. So there's the start of it. Now, trees on their branches and even on their trunks will start to grow other new little branches. We won't add any to our trunk right now, but we will add a little sneak of a branch starting to form off of this one. Again, we're not going to mirror it because we don't want it to be too much the same, but we are going to sneak another little start of a branch. Maybe sneak another little one down here. And remember, they're not going to go downwards. They're either going to go outwards and try to go upwards because they're trying to get closer to the sky. Okay? Now for the leaves. If you wanted to do a winter scene and say this is, or even fall and the leaves are falling off and you might have a little pile of leaves at the bottom, you could leave your tree like this. But we're going to go with adding the leaves to it. So we're taking it another step further. When you do the leaves, unless you are very, very close to the tree, you are not going to see individual little leaves. You're going to see a group of leaves. So this is where kind of what we did in our very first tree where you did the big bubble around it. Only this time, we're going to keep it small. You're going to pick one of your little branches, any one of them, and you're going to do that kind of cloudy shape around that branch. Think of it like you're making almost like a lollipop or a sucker. So leave a little bit of the stick showing, and then you're going to do a wiggly shape around it. Try not to do a full-on shape like this. You don't want it to be quite that regular. You want it to be a little more chaotic, a little less perfect. And when you do the one next to it, that's going to look like it's going behind. So you're going to follow around, and it's going to stop when it hits that first one. So smaller branches are going to have smaller groups of leaves. As your branches start to come higher up, you're going to want to start getting a little bit bigger. If you have a tiny split like this, you can keep the two of them together and just do your bubble around that. And mine are going way off the page at this point, but that's all right. Let's actually have this one in the front. The overlapping will also help to create a feel of it being more three-dimensional. So by having one that looks like it's on top of another. And then we can even sneak in a few extra little groupings because we know that the tree is branching off in other areas. So we'll sneak just a couple little extra sections in there. So let's talk about shading. A tree is not going to be left plain white. There are trees, especially in Michigan, we have birch trees, which have a white bark, but even they are not solid white. So we're going to shade this in. And I'm taking my time, going pretty slow, because I don't want to show too many lines in here. Trying to keep it kind of smooth. Now with our pencil drawings, you usually want to have some kind of possibly paper towel nearby. Tissue paper can work as well. Toilet paper can work, but we want to try and conserve that as much as possible, right? So if you do have paper towel on hand, you can use that as a blending tool. You can also use your finger. So if you don't have any kind of paper towel or anything handy and you don't want to use up your toilet paper, you can just use your finger. It just means that you're going to end up washing up a little bit later. So any areas where the pencil did not blend very well, you can go over it with your finger or with your paper towel. Just don't get it wet. You don't want to get any of your pencil drawings damp if you can avoid it. Okay? You don't need too much blending on that though. We actually want to have a little bit of texture to this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually sneak a few up and down darker vertical lines. I don't want it to look like scribbles, so I'm not going back and forth. I'm just adding a couple little lines here and there. And that's just to help give the feeling of the bark that is not perfectly smooth. I want it to have a feeling like it's maybe a little bit lumpy in some places. Maybe even give them a little bit of a curve. Yeah. So for the tree leaves now, again, I don't want to make the shape of a bunch of different leaves. That would take a crazy amount of time and is really not necessary. From this distance, from us standing further up in the foreground, we're not going to be seeing every individual leaf. So what I want you to do instead is to start doing some little spirals. It is okay if you don't completely get rid of all the white, because leaves are going to have little spaces in between them for the sunlight to come through. Okay? When you do the next section and you've got an overlap happening, try to do the leaves right next to it a little bit lighter, just right next to it, and then start to get darker again. You want to leave that just a little bit lighter there so you can see the difference from where the front one is and the back one. You don't want them to merge together too much. Having that little bit of overlap again really makes it help look more 3D. Now we're going to start moving into the top ones, start doing those as well. It's good at this point to be a little bit chaotic and not try to go in perfect lines and let your pencil even slip outside your line a little bit. Just helps to make it feel a little more natural. Let's see, this one's definitely in the foreground, so let's get you next. So another good tip for working with a landscape, you want to make sure that you're starting kind of toward the front and working your way back when you're doing, especially with pencil. You can do some planning, drawing light lines in the background, but you don't want to go too much finalizing things that are in the background, just because as you work, you might have some things like this tree that would cover over it. So if I had drawn a whole mountain range back here and colored it really nice, I would have ended up having to erase parts of it or change parts of it because this tree would end up covering it. So it's a good idea to kind of plan out what you're going to do, but then to also work from the front towards the back. I hear footsteps, ladies and gentlemen. I think we might have a visitor. Who's that? We do have a visitor. Let me see if we can get him on camera. Who's that? Wiley! Wiley, come here. Wiley, come here. Surprise visitor. Hey, don't you knock down my curtain. He's off. That's okay, we had a visitor. It's just like a regular classroom when somebody comes to visit in the room. It's real. It's realistic, guys. My dog is adorable, thank you. I'm glad you like him. His birthday's coming up. He's going to be 4. Does it matter if it is not that good? Question in the chat. Batul. It does not matter. Because here's the thing. I don't know if I got to give you guys this speech before we went on this extended break, but I do not believe that you can be a bad artist. I believe that you can be inexperienced, which means that you haven't had enough practice yet. As long as you're trying your best on it, that's fine. I am not expecting you guys to draw a picture that looks exactly like mine. I'm expecting you to do your best to try and get it to look as good as you are able to do, and to maybe learn a few tricks to make it look even better than you normally do. So if it's not matching mine, that's okay. You're not going to match mine. I have a lot of experience with this. I'm going to try and do my best, though, because I want you guys to see that, that you should be working at your best level. So I'm going to try and break it down to show you guys all the tricks that I use so that you can try and get yours to a higher level. So I will not be grading on good or bad. I will be grading on, did it look like you tried your best? And that's true whether we are on an extended vacation like this or we are in our actual classroom. That's how I always look at everything, is did you try your best? The only time people get poor grades in my class is if they don't do their best work or they just don't do it. So as long as you're doing it and you're trying your best, you're going to be fine. If you didn't get the packet, you can either send me an email and I can email it to you, or if you're able to get on Google Classroom, the packet is on there. You don't have to print it out or anything. You can do just like this, where you look at the directions and draw it on a separate piece of paper. I know there was a lot of confusion in those first couple of days. Not a lot of people stopped by to get the packets because they were told a lot of their work was going to be online. And it is. My work is online, but it's also a little bit confusing, I know. To have some work online and some of that online work saying to do stuff by hand like this. But that's why I thought that this would be a little bit easier to do these kind of follow along drawing lessons. Did I not respond to your email there, Lila? I hope I say your name right. I'm sorry if I don't. I'm not able to ask you guys if I'm saying them right or not. If you did it on paper, what you would need to do is take a picture and email it to me, or you can attach it onto Google Classroom. There is a way, when you open up the assignment, there's a button that says Add, and if you click on it, it will say Add a file, and then you just put your picture file in there. Lila, if it was a while ago, send me another email. If it might have gotten buried by this point. I've been getting a ton of emails, so send me a new one. I will make sure to send you the packet again then if you need it. Or if you're able to get on Classroom, do that. And I can tell you what the code is before we sign off today, if you need the Classroom code. That should have gotten emailed out. I've sent the email a couple of times with the Classroom code. So check your school email, or have your parents, if their email is on our system, have them check their emails, because I've sent out a couple different times the Classroom code. There we go. I'm sorry my hand covered a lot of that. But it gives you this nice feeling of looking like leaves, and you can see just these little lighter areas where it makes it feel really cool in 3D. It says I have 2 classes? Interesting. We'll have to try check those links again then. I'll double check it. I do have more than one class because I have 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I do have a bunch of different classes on there, guys. But if you're entering in the right code, it should work. Do the classes have names, Lila? If they say which one it is, it should be dependent on, it should have like the number for your grade level. So if it's like Art 6, Art 5, Art 7, you want to make sure you get the right grade number. Alright, so let's do, found it, good, okay. Let's do a different kind of tree now. We're going to do a fir tree, like a pine tree. We're going to start that one a little bit higher though. Let's go on the other side of our page now, and we're going to go up into midground 2 this time. So we're still going to do our trunk, but because we're starting it a little bit higher, our trunk must be thinner because it's further away, and we're going to take this right up into the sky. Our fir tree is going to be a little bit different looking. Still keep that trunk a little bit thin. So where a leafy tree is always reaching up, our fir tree, the branches tend to spread outwards a little bit more. You see 5 and 6? Pick the right one then. So this is going to feel probably a little bit familiar, and it's going to seem like it is a little bit too simple, but that's kind of the nice part of this. From the top of this, you're going to start to draw as if you were doing a triangle. Keep it kind of short, not past the horizon line. Now instead of going straight across like an actual triangle, you're going to do a curve shape, like a smile. And it's going to create almost like a little cone. Then we're going to move onto that smile line, not right at the edge, but a little bit inwards, maybe about halfway in, and you're going to do another triangle on both sides. This one a little bit longer with another curve. And we're going to keep doing that all the way down. Until we got just a tiny bit of trunk still showing. let's go ahead, shade the trunk in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fill in each of these sections. But instead of doing circular, like we did for the leaves, since leaves tend to be a little bit rounder, we're going to keep this very jagged. So what you want to do is it's almost like you're starting toward the middle and you're going to be doing lines heading outward. And you can do this as a scribble motion. I'm just drawing the line so you can kind of see. They're each going out away from the top toward the edge. So then I'm going to scribble that on in. And again, you don't want it too perfect. You don't want to necessarily get rid of all of the little white. And you don't want the lines at the bottom to all be perfectly on that line. You want them to be a little longer and a little shorter. And then we go to the next section, it's going to be the same thing. It's almost like you're aiming for the top of the tree. So your lines are going outwards and outwards. It's almost going to look like a skirt. And then we're going to scribble that in and scribble that in. Again, not too perfect. Jagged at the bottom. And we're going to keep going one row at a time. These are nice because you can go and scribble really dark as well. And it's kind of nice to have some lighter scribble and then go back in and really kind of dig in with your pencil and do a couple of really dark lines. Helps to give it texture and layers. Good morning. We're drawing a landscape. If you missed our beginning of it, learning to draw different things in a big space. And I'm just going to sneak my eraser in here and just kind of go right around where I see those that line that I had made for the edge of the tree, and just kind of get rid of little bits of it. And you can see that it's leaving some little marks. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Little bits of texture. Yep, we're going to be every day, 10 o'clock till 11. And we'll be doing this drawing until it's done. So if we end up working on this all week and it makes it look awesome, great. If we end up finishing it a little early, then we'll end up doing like some other fun stuff. So it won't necessarily be you following along with me. It might just be this is our art time together. So I'll be doing a fun little project and you guys can come and just kind of hang out and watch or whatnot. And if you decide to sleep in past 10 o'clock, you can always find the videos on my YouTube. You can just look up Lisa Schoen on YouTube and find me there. And these are also going to be posted on Google Classroom. So if you missed the stream that day, you can always catch up with it on YouTube or on Classroom, either way. So let's sneak in one more little tree. Let's go back and do a leafy tree, but we're going to make this way toward the back. We're going to do this in the background line. So kind of close to our little fir tree here. And this one is going to be very small, so keep your line pretty thin. Skinny, skinny little tree. We're going to use our Y shape. Let's make one a little bit longer than the other. And let's sneak in a little bonus branch. And that might be about it. This is pretty far away, so we don't want too much. So then we're going to start filling in the leaves. Now for this one, because it's so far away, I'm not going to worry about trying to draw out all of the different sections. I'm just going to go ahead and do that swirly. Remember, do it kind of dark around the outside and a little bit lighter toward the inside so we can see where they overlap. And then maybe just, let's sneak another little one up at the top here just to help fill that in. Lighter in the middle, darker on the outer side. Couple facts for you guys too. A lot of squirrels, especially here in Michigan, don't go use holes in trees. They actually build nests like birds do. We have a squirrel's nest in our backyard right now. Yes, you can add other things if you want to. Just be careful about doing anything too big yet, because we are going to be adding some more stuff. I want to show you guys how to do mountains, a forest, river, rocks, flowers. We're going to kind of add all those things. So you will have time to be able to add some extra stuff to it if you would like to, but maybe hold off on that until another day or two. So we got a couple more minutes yet. Let's go ahead and let's do a river. How about that? We're going to start off kind of on our tree side. And the goal is we'll bring it down towards the middle, and we'll actually turn it into a little pond that we'll have up at the front here. So let's even get the pond kind of ready. So lightly, not too dark, right around the foreground, we're going to do a curve. Keep in mind, any kind of river, pond, lake, any kind of body of water in a picture is always going to be bigger than you think it should be. You had a squirrel dig a hole under your gate? I'm not surprised. They are tricky creatures. Okay? So remember, no spiky waves here. We're not going to do any kind of waves yet. We're going to leave that be. Let's go do our river. So we want our river to kind of curve a little bit through here. What you want to be careful of, though, and let me actually show you a little something first. Come here, scrap paper. You guys might have seen something that'll look like this before, where you draw a triangle shape, put a couple lines in it, and it becomes a road. What you need to know to make this work is that as things get further away, they get smaller. So as the road that's closer to you is wider, and as it gets further into the distance, it looks like it gets smaller. Just like if you drew a turtle at the side of the road down here, if you drew a turtle at the side of the road down here, it needs to be a lot smaller. If you drew it the same size, that is a giant turtle. Because as it gets closer to your horizon line, it should be getting smaller. Okay, so when we do our river, you want to keep that in mind, that as you get further away, things are going to get smaller. If you still have old classwork that you haven't turned in yet, that's fine. You can still turn it in. I'm going to be accepting stuff for quite a while. We understand that everything was very confusing the first couple of weeks. So if you didn't get the first 3 weeks stuff done, don't worry. You guys are going to get a chance to turn that in. Take your time. I don't need you guys to rush it. Work at your own pace. Get it to me when you can. So for our river, we're going to start off way back on the horizon line. We're going to have it do a little curve right in the background space. So like a little letter backwards C. Then we're going to bring it back towards our river here. So it's going to start to curve back, and we're going to aim right for this little spot, kind of not all the way to the edge, but pretty close. So one nice big swoosh right there. So that's one part of the river. Now what we're going to do is starting back at the top. This is very far away, so we're not going to split it too soon. We're going to stay very, very, very close to this line. And as you make that curve, now you can start to give it a little bit more space so that when you finish the letter, the first part, it's very thin and then slowly starts to get a little bit wider. And we're going to aim for right around here. So again, we're slowly going to curve around just like it curves here. We're going to curve this around, not hitting our tree, down into our pond. So we can get rid of some of these lines here. Sorry about the focus keep going in and out because it's trying to match with when I put my hand under, then it's trying to focus on my hand. So let's talk about shading in this river now. What you're going to want to do is kind of just draw lightly some lines that follow the river. No waves, do not do any wiggly lines. We're just doing lines that are following the river. So you can see I'm just doing a line and a line and a line, and I'm holding my pencil back a little bit because I'm drawing them lightly. And I'm just following the river right now. This is meant to look like the current of the river, the direction that the river is flowing. So when you get down to the pond, your lines are going to start to spread out. So you'll have some still coming in towards the middle of the pond, but others are going to start to go out toward the edges. And they're going to start to flatten out. As the water starts to calm. So right at the edges, just little straight lines. Again, pretty lightly. So now here's where your paper towel is going to come in handy if you have some. If you don't, you can just use your finger. I'm trying to stay a little clean right now though. Today's my sister's birthday, so we're going to be doing some celebrating later, and I don't want to be too crazy dirty. So now I'm going to start to blend in along the edge of the river. Be careful not to go too far. If you do go over the edge a little bit, it's fine. It's pencil. It will erase. Don't have a panic attack or anything like that. But definitely practice on trying to keep within that line if you can. I will tell her happy birthday. Thank you for those well wishes. Scoot a second paper. We've got blending to do. So the goal in this is to blend in most of the lines, but still be able to see just a little hint of them. Here's also a really good trick as well. You can go ahead and scribble on a piece of scrap paper. Make sure it's actually scrap paper. Please do not use a nice new sheet of paper as your scrap paper. You know, ask your mom and dad for like a newspaper or an old bill or something that you can scribble on. Rub it in so you get that pencil on your paper towel, and then you can take your paper towel directly to your paper, and that will also help to blend in and add a little bit of a darker tone without you having to try and do your pencil. That's looking pretty nice. Need a little bit more. That's right, I don't get to finish the stalker story with you guys. Maybe we can do it on a fun day when we're just kind of having fun doing art together. It's not quite the same though, because, you know, the part of the whole thing with the story is acting out some of the stuff that happens, because it's so crazy. So let's add, we have about 4 minutes left, so let's add one more little thing on here. Let's add a little rock. So right at the edge of the river, you're going to start off with, think of it like you're trying to make a curve, almost like a smile, but I don't want you to make it perfect. I want you to make it a little bit bumpy. I'll get her to come on one day. You guys can see my sister. She'll do a pop-in visit. Next time a dog comes down and she comes to chase him back upstairs. So now the top of the rock is going to be, again, it's almost like you're doing a half circle curve shape, but I want you to make it not perfect. So make it definitely kind of wiggly. And this we're going to shade in a little bit darker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use little scribbles. So little up and down scribbles, little up and down scribbles. Again, not making it perfect, letting some of the paper show through helps to give it a little bit of a texture. And I'm even going to go along the edges and add a little scribble to the edges just to help make it look even a little less perfect. And we'll have a little bit of darker spots and a little bit of lighter spots. And then to really make it look like it's in the water, right around the edge, you're going to add a couple of little ripple hints. Now, ripple is like a small wave that happens. And so especially on the side where it's hitting, the river water is coming in, there's going to be a couple little curves. We'll do some on one side, do some on the other side. And these are just hints that the water is hitting the rock and kind of bouncing back a little bit. Yes, my sister does live with me. She is my roommate. We are best friends, BFF forever. We've been living together for quite a while. It is technically my house, but she pays for like the electricity and the cable and all of that. So I pay the rent, she pays everything else. And then we split the food. It's a great arrangement. So we're going to pause this here. We actually have a house. Let me see if I can re-situate this. Ta-da! All right, so that's part one of our landscapes for today. Tomorrow we're going to keep working on this, and next week we're going to be doing something that's going to start with pencil, but then we're going to add a little bit of color to it. So if you have anything like colored pencils, crayons, or markers, you're going to probably want those handy. Have them kind of nearby, keep that in mind, but this week is all going to be about the our landscape and finishing that. We need to do a Zoom. You know what? I thought it might be fun if we could figure out one day to have a Zoom and have the streaming so that you guys could see me on the computer and I could still be talking to you, but also have the stream. But that would mean you guys would have to have like 2 different windows open as well so that you could see and talk to me, but also see the project. So, I mean, I don't mind having a chat with you guys, but it's a little bit harder to do the art and stuff on the board. So, thought about it. If you guys are really into it one day and want to give it a try, I am open to trying that. But for the most part, this is going to be our setup for now. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Hold on to that artwork. We're going to continue it tomorrow. And stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, wear a mask. All those things, okay? I want you guys to stay well. And we're going to get all through this and come back in the fall, I guess. It's going to be kind of crazy thinking of it that way. So you guys take care. Have a great day. And see you later. Shutting down.